Culloden is not just a battlefield. To anyone who carries the Jacobite story in their heart, this moor feels like a wound that never fully closed. When you stand here on this harsh and open ground, you feel the weight of the sacrifice made by men who believed they were fighting for their king, their clans, their way of life, and who paid for that loyalty with their lives. There is a heroism here, but it's quiet and tragic. The desolation that lingers isn't simply the emptiness of the land, it's the echo, the coast crushed and the catcher banished for daring to rise. Other great battlefields, Gettysburg, Waterloo, Antietam, shared that strange, heavy silence. Places where ordinary people step into history, fought for something greater than themselves, and changed the world, even in defeat. Culloden stands among them, but with a sorrow all its own. This video walks through the ground where the Highland charge broke, where clans fell beside their kin, where a dream died but was never forgotten. If you listen closely to this place, you can still feel the courage, the hope, and the heartbreak of the Jacobite cause. Culloden Moor is a place that speaks before you say a word. The moment you step into it, the wind hits you with a row and felt it honesty, as if the land itself refuses to let you forget what happened there. This is no grandeur of this ground, no rolling hills or dramatic cliffs, just a bleak open stretch of heather and marsh, exposed to the sky, and somehow that makes the lost feel heavier. For anyone who views this place through Jacobite's eyes, the moor isn't simply a battlefield, it's a scar, a reminder of loyalty, courage, heartbreak, fused together in a single moment of history. When you walk this ground, you feel the weight of the men who gathered here, believing they were fighting for something greater than themselves. They came for a king, for their clans, for the promise, for restored Scotland. They came with hope in their hearts, in spite of everything that had gone wrong on the long road north. But Culloden offers no comfort. Even now, centuries later, there is a sense of desolation that refuses to fade. The wind moves across the moor like a lament. The silence here isn't peaceful, it's heavy. It feels like the pause after a scream, the breath that follows a moment of terrible clarity. You can almost sense the fear, the exhaustion, the quiet determination of the men who stand in the Jacobite line. And that's the strange thing about all battlefields. Gettysburg in America carries the same weight. Walk through its fields at dusk and you feel the ground humming with the memory of sacrifice. The same is true. The same is true here. Places like this, don't forget. They hold everything, the bravery, the terror, the dreams, the rose, and died in an instant. Culloden is a place where history changed, and where the people who fought for the Jacobite cause faced the full force of that change. The openness of the moor means there's nowhere to hide, not for them, not for us. When you stand here, you're standing in the echo of their last stand, the quiet shadow of everything they risked and everything they lost. That's the weight of this place. It isn't just soil, heather. It's memory, it's sacrifice, it's story written to the wind, waiting for us to listen. The path to Culloden wasn't straightforward, and it wasn't inevitable. The Jacobite army didn't begin as a beaten force. Far from it. When the rising started, it was fueled by belief. The belief that a Stuarts could return, that Scotland could regain something it had lost, and that the clans, divided for generations, could stand together under a single banner. The early victories fed that hope. Highbridge, Bristolpans, Falkirk, ordinary men, farmers, and fishermen, crofters and craftsmen stood shoulder to shoulder and toppled professional armies. They fought with heart, and for a while, it looked as though heart might be enough. In those days, the cause felt blessed, driven by momentum, guided by faith in a restored monarchy, a different future. But as the winter dragged on, reality hit harder than any masketball. Supplies ran thin. The long march into England stalled. Some clansmen deserted to protect their families. Others simply couldn't march any farther. And still, they kept going. Not because they expected glory, but because loyalty demanded it. By the time they returned north, the Jacobite army was exhausted, starving, cold, stretched beyond breaking point. And yet they gathered here, on this moor, because turning back was never an option. The decision to launch the night march, the desperate attempt to surprise the government army, shows just how far they were willing to push themselves. When the march failed, hunger and fatigue took their toll. Men fell behind, the army scattered in the darkness, and by dawn the chance was gone. So they stood here instead, on ground that did not favour us, facing a government army that was better fed, better armed, and better prepared. The choice wasn't between victory and defeat, it was between standing together or breaking apart. The Jacobite army chose to stand. When you look at this place today, when you feel the cold wind cross your face, remember that every man who stood on this line did so knowing the odds. They weren't fools, they weren't fanatics, they were men of duty, honour, and belief, and they faced what was coming with their heads held high. When the battle finally began, it unfolded with brutal clarity. The Jacobite line stretched across this moor, exposed and battered by rain and sleet. Opposite them stood Cumberland's army, disciplined ranks, level ground artillery already trained on the Highland positions. The imbalance was stark, and the Jacobites knew it. The cannon fire started first, a round shot ripping through the heather, canister blasting the front ranks apart. Men fell before they ever saw the enemy's eyes. The clans stood under the barrage for nearly an hour, waiting for the order to charge. Every second tightened did not in their stomachs. For a Highlander, standing still under fire was its own kind of torture. Their strength was in the charge, in movement, in momentum, in meeting the enemy face to face. And here they were, pinned to the spot, dying by inches. When the order finally came, the Jacobite tried search for it with everything they had left. Imagine that moment, a wave of men, cold, starving, exhausted, running straight into musket fire, bayonets, artillery. That's courage on a scale we struggle to understand today. The ground was soft and even, sucking at their feet, breaking formations, slowing their momentum. But they pushed on. Clan Cameron, Clan Stuart of Appin, the Macleans, men who had fought together all winter, charging through hell itself. They crashed in the government's left, and for a moment, just a moment, the line wavered. Bayonets clashed with broadswords and target. Muskets fired in point blank range. It was chaos, but it was the kind of chaos where Highlanders excelled. If the Senor had been able to support them, history might have taken a different turn. But the Jacobite Senor never made it. The artillery tore it apart. The soft ground slowed uncharged until it fell entirely. Some men tried to push forward through the gaps into what smoke and mud. But the momentum was gone, and as the centre collapsed, the right stood alone. When Cumberland's troops counterattacked, the Jacobite line broke. Not because they lacked courage, but because courage can't withstand everything. They had charged across impossible ground, and impossible odds. They had done together with loyalty and bravery that deserves to be remembered. Standing here now, it's easy to see the shape of the battlefield, the distances, the exposure, the terrible open vulnerability of it. But what you can't see is the fury, the fear, the sheer determination of the men who fought on this ground. The moor keeps its silence, but it still remembers. When the Jacobite line finally broke, the battle didn't end. Battles usually end when one side withdraws, when the fighting stops, but Culloden didn't stop. What happened next was something far darker. The Highlanders who survived the charge turned back across the moor in small groups, desperate, starving, bleeding. Some threw down their weapons. Others tried to carry wounded kinsmen through the mud. Many didn't get far. Cumberland's orders were brutal. His dragoons rode through the field, cutting down the wounded where they lay. Men who couldn't stand, men who were crawling, men who were already dying. They met the same fate. This wasn't pursuit. It was extermination. The government army didn't fear a regrouping. They wanted to make an example, to send a message written in blood across the Highlands. Villages near the battlefield were set upon, crofts burned, suspects dragged from their homes, women interrogated, children driven out the cold. Their reprisals were meant to break the spirit of the clans forever. And in many ways they did. The disarmament, the banning of tartan, the outlawing of traditional dress, the dismantling of clan authority, these weren't just political acts. They were cultural assaults designed to sever a people through their identity. And yet, even in the darkest days after the battle, stories of defiance survived. Men who hid in the hills, women who sheltered fugitives, communities who endured because they had no other choice. The Jacobite cause was defended, but the idea behind it of loyalty, of kinship, of a Scotland that remembered itself, refused to die. Walking this moor today, you can still feel the weight of the aftermath. The cairns marking where clans fell, the long lines of stone raised in remembrance. This wasn't just the end of the rising, it was the reshaping of the nation through force, fear and punishment. The government saw Culloden as the moment they finally broke the Highlands, but the memory of what happened here became something they couldn't control. Culloden's legacy isn't just only the battle, it's everything that followed. The praise the Highlanders paid, the culture that arose again in song, story and remembrance. Defeat ended the rising, but it didn't erase the people who fought for it. As the centuries passed, Culloden became more than a battlefield. It became a place of memory, a symbol of everything the Jacobite cause meant: hope, courage, tragedy, and the fierce loyalty of people who refused to forget. When you stand here now, it's just impossible not to feel the echo of that history pressing in from all sides. The moor has a silence unlike any other. It isn't empty, it's contemplative, heavy, the kind of silence you find at Gettysburg or Waterloo, where the land seems to remember for you. These places share a strange kinship. Fates where ordinary people stood at the edge of the world as they knew it and faced forces far beyond themselves. But Culloden has a loneliness the others don't. It's more exposed, more raw. There is nothing here to soften the truth. Over the years, the Jacobite story transformed into legend. Not because of the romance, not because of Bonnie Prince Charlie's image and paintings and songs, but because ordinary Highlanders carried the memory forward through names, through stories, through a stubborn refusal to let the moor fall silent in a way the victors intended. The cairns, the clan markers, the preserved battlefield, all this exists because people kept returning, kept remembering, kept insisting that the sacrifice meant something. Culloden reminds us that defeat does not erase identity. The Jacobites lost the battle, but they shaped Scotland so in ways that Victoria's government never imagined. The story of Culloden became part of who Scotland is: proud, wounded, resilient, and willing to forget its dates and dreams they died for. As you watch this video, and as you see the moor through a modern lens, try to feel what endures. The courage of men who stood in the face of impossible odds. The heartbreak of the cause extinguished. The quiet dignity of the culture determined to survive. Culloden is not nostalgia. It's not sentiment. It's a reminder of what loyalty costs, what ambition demands, and what memory preserves. The wind that crosses the field today carries more than weather. It carries the echo of voices long gone. It carries the weight of last stand. It carries a truth that still matters. The Jacobite cause may have fallen here, but the memory of those who fought for it never will. Sin fiúil ba a chúisla ar sin sich, is socinach ba an agnich. Blood is still ur fathers, and ours the valor of their hearts.